Okay, metabolic pathways inhibitors. So first group of sorts will be synthesis of folic acid. Sorry, it's going to be, the class is going to be sulfa drugs. Okay? So they inhibit folic acid synthesis, which results in the inhibition of nucleotide synthesis. Does that make sense? So no folic acid, no nucleotides. Are you following me? And this is an interesting story. So you have a group of drugs called sulfonamides. Inhibit, as far as I remember, step 1. So this is the pathway. This is the step-by-step pathway with consequential steps. Does that make sense? 1, 2, 3, they like go one after another. So sulfonamide inhibit one step of that pathway. Trimethoprim inhibits step 2. Or maybe 3, doesn't matter. Here's the point, look, and this is really an interesting observation here. So these drugs inhibit 2 different steps of the same metabolic pathway. Are you following me? If you use each of these drugs individually, it will be bacteriostatic. When you combine them, they become cidal. This is called pharmacological synergism of antibiotics. Does that make sense to you? Remember I mentioned the drug called Bactrim? This is it. Bactrim actually makes a pretty good broad spectrum antibiotic. You combine sulfonamide trimethoprim, okay? We're good? And you get bactericidal effect. Is that clear? Now, another inhibitor of metabolic pathway is isoniazid. Trying to remember the name. Inhibits the synthesis of mycolic acid. Mycolic acid should sound familiar, shouldn't it? Remember we're talking about mycobacteria, the gram-positive cells that have a layer of mycolic acid outside of the cell wall. So isoniazid inhibits synthesis of mycolic acid, inhibiting the growth of mycobacteria. Kind of setting the stage for really big announcement. Okay. And diaryl quinolones inhibit ATP synthase. Really toxic drugs. Really huge side effects. Okay. We good so far? Good? Now, what I wanted to say here, kind of setting the stage for a big announcement. First of all, we all appreciate, right, that we start with more or less conventional antibiotics. So like if you walk into doctor's office with a sore throat, nobody's going to give you ciprofloxacin, okay? Makes sense. Unless you allergic to penicillins, you're going to get amoxicillin. Am I clear? And then if the treatment doesn't work, physician would escalate the treatment, would move to more broad spectrum, more efficient drugs. Does that make sense? There's a category of microorganisms, specifically Mycobacterium tuberculosis, which is a problem because Mycobacterium grows slowly and it has a lot of resistance. So I just wanted to illustrate something here. So you see this? These drugs, xazolidinones, are used almost exclusively to treat Mycobacterium tuberculosis infections. Does that make sense? It's not for the exam. I don't have to write it down. I'm just illustrating. These drugs, same story, specifically for tuberculosis. These drugs, same story, specifically for tuberculosis. These drugs, same story, specifically for tuberculosis. So basically we had to develop a separate set of ammunition to target just one microorganism because it's so notoriously resistant, so hard to treat. So far we good? Okay.